Hey everyone. Well, in this episode I'm going to fix something on my boat that's a bit of a design flaw for CNC. At least it is on my boat. And I'm not sure if other CNCs out there have the same flaw, but it is the anchor locker, or also known as the chain locker. And that is at the bow of the boat, and that's where you store your anchor rod and chain. So here's a look at the locker from above, and you can see it's actually a very spacious locker with lots of storage room, so no concerns there. And at the bottom of the locker, you can see the drain is at the very top of the screen. As we get closer, you're going to see that I've drawn a couple lines to show where the level is of the drain compared to the bottom of the locker. So the issue is that the drain is higher than the bottom of the locker, and water ends up pooling in the bottom and it's unable to drain properly. So having water sitting in the bottom of the locker all the time obviously isn't good for your anchor rod. And I do have a wooden grate that sits on the bottom of the locker, so the rod isn't sitting in the water at least, but I still don't want to have water in there. Why would I when there's a drain available? And the obvious solution is just to fill the bottom of the locker with thickened epoxy. So filling the bottom of the locker with the thickened epoxy up to the level of the drain will obviously stop any water from pooling in the bottom, but I would rather have the bottom of the locker angled towards that drain. So I had to come up with a little bit of a solution of how to pour the epoxy in, have it angled so that it's higher at the aft end of the locker and lower at the bow where the drain is. And it was actually quite simple. So I've made some really rough drawings to help explain how I was going to achieve that angle of thickened epoxy in the bottom of the locker. In the first drawing, you'll see that the boat is level and there's the little drain hole, and the bottom of the locker is lower than the drain hole, so you can see the water that pools at the bottom. Once I removed the anchor and all the chain, I took it off the bow and I placed it in the back of the boat, right behind the wheel. And what that did is it made the bow come up a bit and it squatted more in the back. This next drawing here, it's a little exaggerated, but it's just to get the idea across of how I was achieving this angle eventually. And this is how the boat's going to sit while I do all my pouring of the thickened epoxy. So I pour the epoxy in up past the level of the drain, and it's going to naturally level on its own. Once everything's hardened and it's finished, I put all the weight back on the front of the boat, and you'll see that what was level before is now angled forward. So that's my theory, and it actually worked out really well. Of course, before I started pouring any epoxy, I have to make sure the front of that drain is blocked with some tape. That way the hole will fill with epoxy but not pour out. The product I used is West System, and I'm sure most of you out there have used it before or are at least familiar with it. The resin is the 105, and there's two different hardeners available. There's a fast cure and a slow cure. I chose the slow cure because I want to have lots of time for that epoxy to level as it sits in the bottom of the locker. And for the thickener I used the 403, which is a microfiber or microfilament thickening agent. You can buy these little handy pumps that one pump will put out 5 parts of the resin to 1 part of the hardener. So it's just 1 pump each, and that's your ratio. The thickening agent is just sort of, it depends how thick you want the epoxy to be. So that's up to you. I did a few pours over a few days because I didn't want to have this massive amount of epoxy in there that might have issues curing. I wasn't sure, but I did prep the surface each time that I poured a new layer. And here I've got the final layer done. You can see it's actually filled over top of the original hole for the drain, and I'm ready to take the tape off and drill a new hole. once the bottom of the locker was finished, it was time to give the rest of it a little bit of a facelift, and by that I mean painting it. So I chose to use this Interlux bilge coat. It's meant for bilge areas, but I figured if it's good enough for a bilge, it's probably good enough for anchor or chain locker. And I just wanted to have a paint in there that was going to be easy to wash and hose down. So I don't know for sure if this is the best paint to use, but it goes on easy, and I did 2 coats of it. I don't think it needed more than that. It covered really well. Something else I've been meaning to do for quite some time is mark my anchor road, because every time I'm anchored, I'm just sort of estimating how much I have out, and it's probably not the best way to do it. So I thought measuring out in 50-foot segments would be good. So to make it really simple and clear for anyone who might be at the bow paying out the anchor road, I decided to put 1 wrap for 50 feet, 2 wraps for 100 feet, 3 wraps for 150, etc. So to whip twine around a line, you create a loop, and you can see at the right is the loop, and at the left behind my thumb is the tail of the twine. And I just start wrapping it around that loop, and the first few wraps are the ones you have to take a little more time and make sure you're not pulling that loop through as you go, and then you can start wrapping faster, and you keep wrapping until you reach the end of the line. And for the finish, you stick the end of it through that loop, and you pull that other tail through, and it'll suck that line right in behind. Once that's done, you can cut it, or I just burn it with a little lighter. This whipping twine is really waxy, so it kind of melts when you burn it. And what I also do is I just heat the wrap a bit, and it actually melts it a bit together, so it'll be a bit more solid. And you can see here I'm doing the 100-foot mark. So now it was time to get the line and the chain back on the bow to try and get that bow back down and have less weight on the stern of the boat. And here's the real test. Will the water drain out now that the bottom of that locker should be angled forward? And it was a success. Here's a little look at the little wood grate I have at the bottom. And finally I get to put all that road back in and chain and not have to worry about water pooling up in the bottom of the locker anymore. One more thing I wanted to fix on the boat, which is a bit of a flaw, and I don't know if this is specific to CNC because it's a pretty standard item on a boat, which is my table. It's nice having a table like this in the salon, and when it's not in use, this is what it looks like. There's a leaf on either side, and the leaf can be secured by a small little latch so that when you're sailing it doesn't swing out when the boat's heeled over. When you're ready to use the table, you just undo the latch, you lift the leaf up for one side or both, and there's small little arms underneath that slide into slots. Now these 2 arms that support the leaf by sliding into the slots is an okay design, but it's not perfect. The flaw in that design is that if you lift the table slightly, they will loosen and eventually pop out. And sometimes it doesn't take that many times to do it. It depends if they're set properly. I've actually had this leaf fall, or that leaf fall, with soup on here before, and it's really messy, and it's one of these things that's been on my list to fix. I just had to come up with a little system or a design that would stop the arm from slipping out. So let's take one more look at the table, but this time I'll show you how those little arms work from underneath and how little upward force you need to actually have them come loose. So I had to come up with something that would stop those little arms from popping out of the slots that they sit in anytime that there was an upward force on the leaf. And I just came up with this simple idea of a little sliding latch. So when I lift the table up and secure the arm into the slot, there's a small little latch right in front of it now that's in the open position so that I can get the arm into the slot. And once it's in there, I slide the latch and close it so that that arm now can't slide out of the slot. Now that those arms are secured with those small latches, I could do this all day and that will never drop again. So I don't know why I didn't do this sooner. Something else that will happen from time to time on a boat is water in the bilge. And I was finding water in my bilge recently, trying to figure out what was causing it, where is it coming from. So narrowing down water leaks on a boat is not easy, but the first thing I suspected was the water system on the boat, because that's often what it will be. But I didn't hear the pump cycling for my pressurized water, so I wasn't really super convinced that that was it. But what I did first was completely dry out the bilge, then not use my water system at all until we had a good rainfall, which unfortunately took a few days, but I do have a foot pump, so I can still use that with no pressure. And we had a couple good days of rain and no water in the bilge, so I could eliminate something was leaking heavily from outside a deck fitting or something. And that was step one. Step two was to use my water pressure system and leave that on for a few days, but not use my hot water tank. And I did that, and again, no cycling of the pump, no water in the bilge. Step three was to turn on the hot water tank. Well, not even 10 minutes after that, there was water in the bilge. So I knew it must be my tank, my hot water tank. I looked around the tank, and there's no water coming from anywhere. And I traced the water from the bilge up to under my galley sink, and there's a little tiny hole which goes to the lazarette where the hot water tank is, and that little hole is underneath the shelf where the tank sits. On the side of the tank there's a relief valve, and from how it was explained to me from my awesome neighbor John, who helped me out with this because he's a plumber, he mentioned that it could be the relief valve because they're an item on the tank that will often fail. I think there's a spring or something he explained in there, and the spring is sensitive to two things: excessive heat, so the hot water tank could be too hot, or excessive pressure. Well, I guess the third thing could be that it just fails and it's worn out. So he came over and he replaced that relief valve for me, and I turned on the hot water tank, and there hasn't been a drop of water in the bilge since. So a big thanks to John again for helping me out with that, and it's awesome to have knowledgeable neighbors. We all sort of have our own backgrounds and things that we're good at and things that we're knowledgeable in. So he's a plumber, and I really appreciated him helping me problem solve the hot water tank and fix it for me. He came over and took about 10 minutes. So what do you do when you have a dry bilge and half a container of bilge coat paint? You paint your bilge. Well, before I end this video, I thought I would answer a question that I've been asked many times, and that is, do you make any money off the videos, and if so, how do you make it? And the answer is yes. I make a small amount of money, and that is by monetizing the videos. So you'll notice when you watch a video, there's a little advertisement at the beginning, and if you watch that, then I make a small amount. I can assure you I can't quit my day job anytime soon, but that's not really why I'm in this. I'm just doing this for fun, and I enjoy sharing experiences with you guys and information. But with that said, I'm not a professional, and I'm not saying this is the way to do things. I think in my videos I'm usually pretty clear that I always recommend you do your own research and you decide what you want. I just like sharing with you guys the products I choose and the processes I choose to use those products. So I still, I strongly believe that everyone should do their own research. But if I can give you an idea, like how to fix a leaf from dropping, then I'm glad I was able to do that. I've met a lot of awesome people in person and just online through the channel, and I've also had negative people send me messages, and anything from I need lessons in wiring to one person actually said I could be liable and be sued for information that I shared one time, and that's getting a little bit silly that, you know, someone's going to try and sue me for sharing some information I have or what's on my boat. But I guess that's the world we live in. So with that said, getting back to the money making part of this, I'm not going to change anything. I'm not going to start any new platforms. I'm really happy with how things are going with the channel. But I did think it would be fun to look at what I actually made in 2015 and share that with you guys. So I broke it down. I made 70 videos. I underestimated each video taking 5 hours. It's probably more like 8 to 10 if you count the actual filming time and the editing. It does take a lot of time and effort. And when I looked at what I made gross off the videos, and of course it was tax season here just recently in Canada, and the tax man took a very large portion of that, I ended up making, if I break it down to the 5 hours per video at 70 videos, I made about $2.57 an hour. So there you go. I'm not making much, but that's not why I'm in it. Now, with all that said, I think it's time that I do ask you guys a favor. And I've been doing these videos for over 2 years, I think now, and clearly I'm not making much at it. But what I would like to try and achieve is more subscribers and have more followers. So, and that gives me the opportunity to meet more awesome people. So my task and my request for you guys is to share my videos, give them a thumbs up if you like them, and I'm going to post a link in the description to my channel trailer. It's only a minute long, I think, and what I'm going to ask you guys to do is copy and paste that link and post it on your Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or whatever platforms are out there for social media. I mean, with social media, we could spread the word quickly, and I want to put the challenge out to you guys to see if we can bump my subscribership up, because it's been a bit stale lately, and it is a lot of work to do this, so it gets a little depressing sometimes when you just see the subscribers like barely moving and losing subscribers. So if you like the videos and if you appreciate the effort and time I put into this, please copy and paste that link and text it to your friends, or like I said, post it on Facebook and tell people that, hey, check out this channel if you think it's worth them checking out. So anyways, that's my request to you guys. See if you're up for it, and comment below if I'm asking too much. Anyways, that's it for this video, and we'll see you guys on the next video.